Twitter users will soon see some changes coming to their timelines. The social media platform announced yesterday via tweet that it had listened to users' feedback.
Twitter says it will introduce a new setting that allows users to switch from a timeline showing most relevant tweets to the original model of most recent tweets. For more on this, we turn to CNET senior producer Dan Patterson. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So right now, the way it's set up is that you get the most recent tweets. The new improved timeline will allow you to toggle between the most recent tweets or what Twitter considers to be the most relevant tweets, or what they're calling in mine the best tweets.
Yeah, so on social media, everything old is new again. Twitter used to be reverse chronological order, and their value proposition to the users was now, instant, what's going on now? And the changes that occurred in 2015 and 2016 were designed to compete with Facebook and other algorithmically sorted social media sites. Of course, this kind of left kerfuffle when we looked at the 2016 election and bad actors gaming those algorithms to propagate bots, spam, and other less than desirable content in your feeds.
So, you know, to deal with that, Facebook has hired a bunch of people to look at you know, whatever postings or that people complain about, But Twitter is still depending on an algorithm, right? Is that sort of, what's the challenge there?
So Twitter has had a harder time tamping down on these bots and trolls and other things because that algorithm is designed for virality, and that means that when somebody likes something, follows something, retweets something, Twitter will auto-propagate that into the top of your feed. This is really good for user engagement, and if we look back at their IPO, they really had to compete with Facebook and other social sites, so they had to do algorithmically propagated news feeds. Right. But changing it to what is new first? Well, you can't propagate a newsfeed with bots if you don't follow a bot. So the changes now will only put accounts that you follow and the most recent content first. Now, right now, this is just a checkbox in your settings. It's a little buried, but they have plans to make this a toggle so you can switch between algorithmic and real time. This is pretty valuable because sometimes I do want to see what friends of friends are searching and showing and tweeting and retweeting, but most of the time I want to see on Twitter what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. So to make it clear for our viewers, if I want to follow Twitter because as a journalist I want to keep up with what's going on up to the minute, I can keep it the way it is, or do I go to the one that's most relevant, the one that toggles to allowing the tweets that are most relevant or the best tweets pop up and propagate into your timeline? Which is the better one?
Well, there is no better.
Okay.
For Twitter, it was better to show engagement to have an algorithmically sorted feed starting in 2015. But most Twitter users who joined prior to 2015 joined because they wanted to see, again, what's happening now.
Right.
So for us as journalists, we might want to be able to toggle back and forth and see what's popular versus what's real time. I think for most users, the typical normal Twitter user, they might prefer an algorithmically generated feed because then they have to do less legwork on their own to discover what's happening. But again, that term, what's happening, is the core of Twitter's value. I can go to Facebook or Instagram or other sites if I want algorithms. On Twitter, especially ahead of the election, real time is what's valuable.
Do these social media platforms run the risk of just getting too complicated? I mean, I look at Facebook and there's this other, you know, you can click on this one thing to determine whether or not this is a valid news article. It just seems like now it's become so much more work to just interface with what was really simple before.
Yeah, I think that, you know, again, the value of Twitter, at least in the old days, and I remember Twitter in beta where the only way to interoperate was sending a text message to 40404. You then got back a response of the people you were following. That was dead simple. But as we go forward and as the competitive landscape evolves, these social media companies have to keep up with each other. And ironically, the people that get left behind are usually the users.
Right.
So what does it mean for the upcoming midterms? What does it mean for the presidential election? I mean, this is clearly an attempt by Twitter to combat the criticism that it was used by foreign state actors to influence the 2016 election. What is it going to mean going forward?
So that is the important question for Twitter right now. Influence campaigns run by nation states and other bad actors are real. This is undeniably real, and the forensic evidence validates this. Influence campaigns depend on algorithms to propagate social media with bots, trolls, and other propaganda-type content. So for Twitter, it was incredibly important to launch this feature before the midterm election because they have to be able to say, look, we were taken once, we're not going to get taken again. And this ability to switch your feed to real time allows them to say, here, look, we've done X, Y, and Z to tamp down on bots and trolls, especially when they look at Facebook, who have actually done a pretty good job at tamping down on this content.
Is it easier to do this or to just hire more people to close out the accounts of those that they think are bots?
It's a lot cheaper to do this.
That's what I mean. I mean, right? It doesn't sound like they want to do the heavy lifting that's required to fix this.
But is that even realistic? Like sussing out all the bots on Twitter, I can't imagine what that would take for humans to do.
Yeah, there was a New York Times story a couple weeks ago about how the amount of bots who are popping up on Facebook exceeds the amount of real accounts popping up on Facebook. So for Twitter, they must be experiencing similar trends. Facebook uses artificial intelligence kind of as this magic bullet. They never go into detail about how they're actually going to use AI to kill some of these fake accounts. I think the reality is that just like with spam in your email, bots and trolls are just a reality on social media, and these companies are maybe better off creating better filters and user experience interface ways to get rid of the bots and trolls as opposed to nuking all of the accounts.
Yeah, I think this is a nuisance that we just have to live with. They're nimble. They change their tactics
like
the
junk
second.
Mail. Like
exactly.
I'm still shocked the amount of junk mail I get in my mailbox when I don't receive any mail for anything else.
Right.
None of my bills, like.
And you have a whole separate mailbox dedicated to junk mail. That stuff's siphoned away from you, and you're still getting stuff. It just is life, like today, right? All right, Dan Patterson, thank you very much.
Good to see you.